お待たせいたしました。本日はお忙しい中、多くの方にご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。第4回目ビヨンド AI 研究推進機構サイエンスカフェを始めさせていただきます。本日司会進行を務めさせていただきます国立遺伝学研究所の高曽あゆみと申します。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。今回は歴史学研究において技術史及び社会史を専門とする東京大学情報学館の久野准教授と AI 研究で国際的に活躍するオーフス大学のシュアン・ルー・フロスト講師をお招きしてSocial Imaginary of AI in East Asia と題してお話を伺ってまいりたいと思います。対談は英語にて進めてまいりますが、同時通訳もございますので、Zoom のコントロールバーにあります地球マークのアイコンを選択して、視聴言語、日本語または英語を選択いただければと思います。また、質問につきましては、日本語、英語、どちらでも構いませんので、チャットにお書きいただいて、お気軽に全員宛てに送っていただければと思います。それでは、ここからは英語にて進めさせていただきたいと思います。Today, we have two guests for our Science Cafe, and I'm pleased to introduce our guests. Our first guest is Dr. Ai Hisano joining me from the Tokyo studio. Welcome, Ai. Dr. Ai Hisano is Associate Professor at the Graduate School of Interdisciplinary Information Studies at the University of Tokyo. She is also a member of the Institute for AI and Beyond. Dr. Hisano specializes in the history of technology, business, and culture, and one of her recent publications explores how our perceptions of food have been shaped by business, the government, scientists, and other stakeholders of the food industry. Our second guest, who is joining us today from Denmark, good morning, Xuan, is Dr. Xuan Lu Frost. She is an assistant professor at the Department of Digital Design and Information Studies at Aarhus University in Denmark, and currently serves as the China representative for a think tank called the Future Society. Dr. Frost is a social anthropologist who has written widely on the social implications of technological innovations such as digital platforms and AI. So welcome to Ai and Xuan.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So the participants might be wondering, you as a historian, why you would be associated with the institution. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit about the institution and also your role at the institution?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So the Institute for AI and Beyond is a center for advanced research on AI established by the University of Tokyo in July 2020 with general support from SoftBank. And I think one of its unique feature is that the institute is consisted of different research fields, including not only science and engineering, but also humanities and social sciences. And I'm affiliated with one of the research teams called BAI Global Forum, which aims to explore diverse implications of AI, including ethical issues. And the majority of scholars in this team specialize in humanities and social sciences, including myself. As Ayumi introduced me, I'm a historian, and there are several other historians as well as sociologists and media scholars. And so what's my role here as a historian, and which I will discuss in a minute later at the end of the seminar. But I think my role, and also probably the role of this team, is to provide multiple perspectives or multiple analytical frameworks to analyze AI, the current research of AI in broad and longer perspectives. And so I think, and also to bridge different disciplines concerning AI research. So that's my role here, and also for the AI.
Thank you. So your role is to bridge AI technology and the society as a whole. So today I think we're going to touch upon that. And if you could elaborate or explain what we're going to be discussing for the next hour or so.
Yes. So today's theme, as you heard at the beginning, it's the social imaginary of AI in East Asia, and then many of you might be wondering what it means. So for the previous Science Cafe seminars, we learned very exciting new research in brain science, engineering, machine learning, and quantum science. And so we are looking at AI from different perspectives today, that is from a cultural perspective. And we argue that how AI is envisioned and how AI is developed are highly influenced by our culture in different society, and vice versa, that is, AI helps create a new culture. So we are looking at AI as a cultural object. So which is the Sean's presentation, main topic of her presentation, which we will hear in a minute. And so based on this theme and also her presentation, we will discuss mainly three topics. One, the first topic is the AI as a cultural object, building on Sean's presentation. And then we will move on to the current trend of AI research and applications in different fields, mainly in business, and their consequences. And lastly, we want to discuss what the role of social scientists and also humanities scholars in AI research. So through these questions and discussions, we want to address what it means to develop and use AI in our society. And I think that thinking about AI is to think about human beings, about ourselves. And AI is a reflection of society. So through this discussion and today's Science Cafe, we want to create a space for discussions to think about what it means to develop AI, and also what kind of society we want to make with AI. And so Dr. Sean Frost, who is a good friend of mine as well, and also a fellow scholar, she is going to talk about social imaginary of AI in East Asia based on her research and also her previous studies. So Sean.
Thank you, Ai, and thank you, Yumi. Thank you for having me. So I'll just jump in. So let me start my presentation with an anecdote. So in the summer of 2019, I attended the World AI Conference in Shanghai. That was perhaps the last big conference I attended in person, and now seems like a lifetime ago. So one of the highlights of the conference was a conversation between Elon Musk and Jack Ma. They're having the talk in a big auditorium. First, actually, the participant didn't really pay attention. We thought it's just going to be another collegial, conversation among the leaders. But soon somebody start, chatting in the corner and say, "Hey, come and watch. They're really fighting with one another." So we immediately found a live streaming screen and start watching. So Elon Musk basically warned the audience about the unintended consequence of AI and urged the adoption of immediate preventative strategies to avoid potential disaster. While Jack Ma, on the other hand, expressed unbridled optimism about AI's potential to transform society in positive ways and called upon leaders to reshape themselves for AI. Elon Musk argued, as encapsulated in this quotation, that computers are already smarter than human beings in many aspects, and this alone is a reason for caution. But Jack Ma immediately countered, computers may be clever, but human beings are even smarter. We invented computers. I've never seen a computer invented a human being. So, and then he continues saying, most of the projection about AI are actually wrong. People like me who are street smart are not scared by AI. So afterwards, many media outlets described, their conversation as a weird debate, as if each man seemed to be on a different planet, saying it was a war with words. So I was sitting in the audience and watching these two titans in the tech field quibble with each other like schoolboys. And I couldn't help but notice how they approach the idea of artificial and intelligence in completely different ways, right? So when Elon Musk say computers are already smarter than humans in many aspects, that is correct. But he's talking from a narrow technological perspective in regard of computers' ability to process and analyze data, complete specific tasks, etc. But when Jack Ma says only humans can create machines, not the other way around, he is referring to humans' creativity, agency, and motivation to transform the world, which are something we cannot find in machines. Although Elon Musk and Jack Ma can hardly represent their society, I think this debate is also a small example of a very important idea, which is no two civilizations define the concept of artificial and intelligence in the same way. There are really many different ways we can understand AI and different attitudes we could adopt towards AI. And they are, to a large extent, shaped by the philosophical and cultural context we are situated in. So AI need to be seen not only as a technological object, but also as a cultural object, one that has been shaped by the particular cultural context it is situated in, as well as the cross-cultural exchange that we have. So, and understanding AI as a cultural object is critical because it helps us to understand the social perception and the social imaginary of AI in particular societies. So when I invited me to give this talk, we immediately agreed that we should talk about the AI imaginary in East Asia. Well, in this case, we will limit it to China and Japan, but I think it would be a great conversation. So first, let's look at the language we talk about AI in East Asia, right? So the Chinese term for artificial intelligence is 人工智能, which was originally introduced into China via Japan in the mid-20th century as a localization of the Japanese term 人工智能, whereas the English name artificial intelligence implies artificiality and perhaps even artifice. AI is something alien to humanity. The Chinese and Japanese phrases have no such association. In fact, 人工智能 and 人工智能 should mostly be faithfully translated into man-made intelligence. The first half of the word with compound with two characters. The first one is 人, which literally means person or human. And the second one is 工, which means work or labor. It is actually the image of a measuring tool that used by artisans in ancient China. You can see the shape. So these characters define AI as a product of human creation and link it to an entirely different constellation of associations. We can sense the effect in popular discourse. For instance, there is a kind of a joke in Chinese tech sector. So some people will say that many products currently being marketed as AI involve more 人工 manual labor than 智能 intelligence. So i.e., many AI-enabled technologies currently rely on armies of human workers to manually code the data and process information instead of actually using machine learning algorithms and so on. So such playful language is deeply revealing. It shows the concept of man-made intelligence that is, it's actually intrinsically centered on the human. So one could argue that the Chinese name AI, man-made intelligence, is closer to reveal the true idea of AI in today's society. As many scholars have argued, AI technology that we experience today is the result of enormous amounts of human labor. For instance, as we can see in this image, for machines to see the objects in the picture, humans first have to code everything in this frame. To make matters worse, the majority of this type of work are right now outsourced to the global south and to temporary workers who are unseen and usually unpaid. So, in this way, if we neglect the human in AI, we actually neglect the increasing global inequality that is rising with AI technology. So for these reasons, some experts actually started to rename their institutions to reflect their understanding of AI. So for instance, in 2019, IEEE and MIT launched a global organization, and they named it the Council on Extended Intelligence. And in the same year, Stanford founded the Human-Centered Center for AI. So they put the word human-centered in front of AI to emphasize the centrality of humans in the development of AI-related technologies. So that's all about names. It's already a lot. But now let's look at the various, influence, the political and cultural forces. So recently, I wrote a book chapter looking at the particular moment of the late 1970s and early 1980s, when Chinese scholars first started researching AI. For those of you who are familiar with Chinese modern history, this moment is particularly important because China just came out of 3 decades of socialism in which Marxism was by far the dominant philosophy and ideology. So unsurprisingly, AI experts, including engineers, mathematicians, viewed AI through the lens of Marxism. For instance, in this opening article of the inaugural issue of Artificial Intelligence Journal, in which Dai Shanren, who is an automation expert and affiliate in the Chinese Academy of Science, used Marx's theorization of human-machine relations to articulate AI's place in the unfolding of human history. So Dai began by quoting the following very provocative passage from Marx. It says, "Nature builds no machines, no locomotives, railways, electric telegraphs, self-acting mules, etc. These are products of human industry, natural material transformed into organs of human will over nature, or of human participation in nature. They are organs of the human brain created by the human hand, the power of knowledge objectified." So building on this idea from Marx, Dai argued that artificial intelligence represented the more perfect objectification of human intelligence, as well as the next stage in the co-evolution of man and machine. While previous generations of technologies has incrementally emancipated humans from physical labor, artificial intelligence, he argued, will emancipate humans from intellectual work. As we can see, the adoption of Marxist theory intensified the human-centeredness in the Chinese imaginary of AI. Well, now we look at history. Let's push the clock back a little bit and let's look at a more recent cultural influence that is very dominant in China right now, which I call Black technology. So another anecdote. So in a recent episode of 奇葩说, which is a popular Chinese debate show, contestants were presented with the following prompt. It says, if there exists a Black technology that will enable a person to trade a portion of their life for money, are we collectively permitted? So both teams, the one arguing in favor of this very controversial hypothetical proposition and the other against, presented, their wide-ranging exposition that rooted in philosophy, ethics, economics, their personal experience. But after rounds of debate, Mr. Ma Dong, who is the host and producer of the show, cleared his throat and offered a concluding thought, which I thought is very revealing. He said, was there ever a single technology in human history that was later proven to be unambiguously or wholly harmful? Based on my limited knowledge, I cannot think of any. Black technologies or any new technologies always provide this world with incremental gains. It is never a zero-sum game. A new thing appears. It does not necessarily lead to me having more or you having less, or you having more and me having less. Most likely, it will end up bringing me some benefit without causing you to lose anything. That is technology. It is a game where everyone wins. So for a non-Chinese speaker, Ms. Ma Dong's sanguine assessment of technology progress might sound naive, even alien. The English term, Black technology, evokes the image of, digital markets, of untraceable transactions, omnipresent control system, and other dystopic technologies placed in service of immoral ends. But in the Chinese, Black technology is a concept with overwhelmingly positive connotation. It refers to those transformative technologies, AI, foremost among them, that are believed to hold the potential to radically increase the general welfare and reshape society in collectively desired ways. So in order to make sense of this evocative term and its kind of counterintuitive associations, it's helpful to explore how it was introduced and reinvented in China. So the phrase Black technology, 黑科技, is actually entered the Chinese discourse around 2011, but it was originally actually a Japanese word. Buraku technology. It's a term coined by a gentleman called Geto Shogi, the author of Full Metal Panic, a novel and anime series. So in the fictional world of Full Metal Panic, Black technology refers to a class of technologies that is so advanced that they exceed the present human comprehension. These include the real-world technology, which one example is artificial intelligence, as well as mythical ones, such as the fairy eye, electronic conceal system, and others. The term Black technology was thus used to convey the incomprehensible power of these technologies, as well as their unknowability and the unbound potential for creation and destruction. The Chinese term 黑科技 retained from the Japanese word the connotation of infallible power, but stripped away the existential concerns. So in 2018, the Chinese National Linguistic Committee included a whole section about the word Black technology. It explained that the 黑 Black in 黑科技 Black technology falls outside of any meaning of the term Black in modern Chinese language, which range from dark to hidden to illicit to evil. To the contrary, it signals the intensely positive outlook towards the future. So 黑科技 is used to refer to conceptual technology with immensely transformative potential that are difficult to realize at the present moment, but could be realized in the future. So 黑科技 quickly assumed a prominent place in popular discourse. The report also noted the skyrocketing popularity of the world. At the highest point in 2018, there are more than 360,000 recorded mentions of 黑科技 in popular media each day. And the term was even co-opted by the leading tech companies for futuristic product branding. So in the advertising campaigns of Xiaomi, the largest producer of smartphones and electronics in China, the firm characterized several of its products as Black technology. Here you can see an image of its CEO, Lei Jing, in a product launch event, standing in front of three big words, 黑科技. So as a poster child of Black technology, AI also had a wide social popularity in China. So instead of showing you a lot of numbers, I will actually show you a personal experience. So this is a picture I took in a bookstore in Shanghai a few years ago. So here is a wide banner. It says, how we'll welcome the intelligence revolution. So you notice the verb they chose, in the bookstore are welcome, not, caution or fear. So the bookstore owners clearly think that is the instinct that people will feel when they are facing the intelligence revolution that ensued by AI. So finally, let me conclude by another short quotation from Jack Ma. So in July 2020, at the third annual World AI Conference in Shanghai, Jack Ma and Elon Musk are invited back again to continue their discussion. But unfortunately, this time, because the raging global pandemic, they couldn't meet in person. So Jack Ma appeared in a hologram form, enabled by the AI technology. And this time he is speaking as a co-chair of a UN high-level panel on digital cooperation. And then he, adopted a much more somber tone this time. So he contended that while recent advances in AI were very promising, are beginning to unlock new levels of wealth and power, but those realized gains were not distributed equitably. He said, today we have unprecedented resource and wealth and ever more powerful ability to process information. But these resources have been used to produce chasms and enlarge differences. And due to the, and this is largely due to humanities, still they lack the wisdom to collaborate in sharing resources and to communicate and exchange among different cultures. And in this instance, I cannot agree more with his statement. As in my role as a scholar and as also as a policy researcher, as Yumi mentioned, for the Future Society, I attended many global conferences on AI governance. And one thing I realized is that what we lack, the key thing we lack, is not the advancement in technologies, is how do we take these technologies to solve actual problems on the ground? And how do we not create more problems when we go and solve these problems? And how do we help societies that are less developed to utilize these technology instead of lagging behind more? So, the key of realizing these goals is collaboration. It's easy to say, but collaboration has to be built upon our understanding of each other. In this regard, again, it's important to see AI not only as a technological object, but a cultural one, right? Because it really helps us to understand how we approach AI differently and how do we resolve these differences and collaborate more effectively. Okay, so I will stop here and hand it back to Ayumi.
Thank you, Xuan, for the nice presentation. I can't agree more than on the last point about technology shouldn't be creating more problems as a result of our new technology. Yes. So I just wanted to mention that there is a comment that came through while you were speaking, and it's from Yoshida-san, and we're just gonna briefly translate it. So she's pleased to be hearing discussions about the definition of AI, or how the definition of AI is shaped. Because she has had this experience of a discommunication when she was talking about AI, because the understanding of the term AI apparently was different among the discussants. And that's why the discommunication occurred. So based on that experience, she's really she's really pleased to be part of listening to our discussion today. So thank you, Yoshida-san, for that comment. We're delighted to hear that. So building on what you just said, you said that so the concept of AI is born or shaped by the cultural context that is situated in. And I wonder if you have any sort of concrete examples, or maybe of how AI or other technologies have been used differently because the cultural object of that society, or the perception or the social imaginary of the AI was different. Do you have any examples that you might be able to show?
Yeah, I think a quick example came to mind because we are still in this global pandemic, hence I cannot be there with you. So I immediately thought of how different societies used AI differently in the sort of approach to the global pandemic. So a lot of media reported how Chinese state has been very harsh in its control of the pandemic. But I think one thing that people are missing, the few mentions, but is how China is really using a lot of AI technologies, and in conjunction with other digital technologies to control the pandemic. For instance, I give you an example, is that one company is developed a technology called AI close contact catcher. So it used a convolutional neural network to analyze a lot of video footages that the camera has been catching on the streets, in public venues, and to identify those people who have been in close contact with people who are identified as COVID positive. So, in China, the adoption of these technology are rather celebrated and immediately embraced by scientists and the public. And I think that is sort of influenced by the idea, I think, in China that we prioritize maybe the social order a little bit more than the individual privacy, or the idea that you can temporarily suspend your individual freedom for the sake of public order. But in Western society, the threshold of suspending personal freedom is much, much higher. People will not be comfortable using these kind of very invasive technologies to monitor people's movement. So it's more opt-in system, right? For instance, now I live in Europe, and another cultural shock for me is, you are given much more information to who you share your data with, whether you want to share your data with the state. You have control because of the GDPR. So yeah, so there's one example I can think of to address your question.
Thank you very much, Sean. So we've been talking about how the notion or the concept of AI is being affected or shaped by the culture that's being situated, touching on examples from Xuan in China. And now I wonder, technology does affect the society that's introducing. So I was wondering, do you two know of new technology or new trending applications of AI that may have such an impact on the culture? So we were talking about culture shaping the definition. Now we want to go vice versa. How does technology shape or affect culture? And maybe I can ask for your perspective.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I can think of an example of the AI technology in the food industry. And these technologies may not be necessarily the state-of-the-art technology that my colleagues at Torai are developing, but I think because food is something that everyone is related to, and also I think this example of AI technology in the food industry raised an interesting and I think important question for us. So over the decade, over the several years, many increasing number of food companies are trying to develop and also employ AI technologies in their business strategies, including product development and also market research. And one of the companies I wanted to share with you is Analytical Flavor Systems, which is a company founded in 2013 in New York City, and they provide a model called gastrograph, which is to predict consumer preference for food and beverages. So by using this model gastrograph, you can, if you are a food company personnel or a product developer, you know what kind of flavors or what kind of taste consumers prefer. And another company called Food Pairing is also another startup, provides digital food maps, what they call digital food maps, and also algorithm to recommend certain food and drink combinations. So they suggest which combinations of flavors or which combination of tastes are better than others. So these technologies and services provide could be beneficial for restaurants and many food companies. It would be easier, less time consuming, and also more convenient for them to develop new menus, new products, and new recipes. And they may not even need special knowledge or skill, but these technologies could generate important questions such as, is there a perfect taste? Is there a perfect flavor? And if so, who decides? And this is a question of agency, I think, which is related to what Xuan said earlier. Who decides what kind of sensory experience people should have or what kind of taste should be prioritized? And also this would also lead to the question of authenticity, which is what kind of, is there an authentic taste or is there authentic flavor? And I don't think there is anything authentic. Authenticity is a cultural construction like AI, but there is a kind of danger that we come to think there is some kind of authenticity there. And also another kind of concern I have, or a question we should probably ask is whether these technologies could standardize our sensory experience. So there is a kind of contradiction in AI research, right? Like these AI technologies and AI system could enrich our sensory experience by suggesting different flavor combinations, which people may not come up with. But at the same time, the same technology can standardize our sensory experience by suggesting this flavor is better than the other. So there are different consequences, including unintended consequences. So I think this is kind of a new trend and new way of thinking. Well, so AI creates kind of our eating culture, right? Like our preference for flavor and taste.
I wonder what the perfect taste tastes like, though. No,
I know, right? Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Whether if I taste it and if I really feel that it was it feels perfect. Anyway, I think those are very good points. I wonder, Xuan, if you have any comment on that about agency and about the standardizing tastes, the unintended consequences on that. Do you have any thoughts on that to add, or?
Yeah, I think what I was talking about is very interesting. And also, it actually made me think that AI is actually a continuation of some of the technology that we already have, right? So we have had the genetic modification, the motivation to create bigger, better food. We have had the goal for a long time that AI is just helping us to achieve that. And then we already see some of the negative results. For instance, you go to a supermarket in US, you see all the fruit, they are identical. They are optimized because of their appearance, but they lack the diversity of the fruit that you taste when you're a child. The strawberry can be small, big, or different colors, but they are much more tasteful. So yeah.
Thank you on that. I wonder if you have any trending technologies that you might want to comment on and let us know about your perspective on this theme.
Yeah. So I think I want to share one technology that I think may have most relevance for people in everyday life. That is personalized pricing. I don't know if any of you had the experience that you are booking your dream vacation and you found some really nice hotel room, and then you get your partner say, hey, look at this hotel room, and then your husband, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend log onto their website and then suddenly found that they get a different price for the same hotel room you found, and then you found the same thing about the airline tickets you just find. So personalized pricing has become a more and more prevalent phenomenon, especially in the industry of hotel, airline, and ride hailing like Uber and Didi. And it's spreading to other retailers as well. So it's sort of different than the previous dynamic pricing we have experienced. Before, you might have the experience that when I'm closer to the date of my flight, it will get more and more expensive, things like that. But now, driven by the AI technology, the platforms will have much more of your personal data. So your physical self, where you live, your employment, etc., and then your digital self, your online browsing history, which computer you're looking at on. Some people reported that when they look at things on iPhone, it's actually more expensive if you look at on other phones. And I interviewed some data expert in a Chinese travel agency. They have more than 70 parameters to determine, the personal price for you. And some as even minute as even you're browsing their website at midnight, the price will be different than a different time. So yeah, so imagine a world in which everything you see, even a milk or a TV, everything will be personalized priced. What our consumer culture will be at that time. So right now we are not there yet because of several barriers. First, a lot of companies haven't collected all their data collection strategies were a little bit outdated, so they haven't collected enough customer data to really use the AI technology to understand personal preferences, your willingness to pay. And another barrier is, I think, consumers are still antithetical. They are unhappy. They feel it's unfair that they are receiving different prices for different things. So now, the companies are testing at the margins. For instance, people will receive different coupons, different discounts, for websites and stuff. But they're not full-blown personalized price yet. So this will, I think, have a lot of food for thought. How do we think about fairness? What is fair, right? So if you reflect upon it, in a lot of areas that we are actually used to personalized pricing. For instance, if you want to get a mortgage, you go to the bank. The bank will review all your history. Have you paid off your debt before? What's your salary? Blah, blah, blah. And then give you a personalized interest rate. And every person is fine with it. And even in the airline industry now, if you get a different price for your ticket, you feel like, it's annoying, but okay, I'll accept it. But people still haven't got used to the idea that you will buy a TV at a different price than your colleague. That seems like outrageous. So what I want to say is our idea of fairness actually changes because of the technologies we adopt, the practice that the business adopts. The things will become more and more normalized. So do we want to intervene? Do we say, okay, this is not okay. This, personal pricing will make things more unequal, or are we going to embrace it because there are benefits that will come with personalized pricing, right? It's a little bit hard to understand. For instance, from the economics, if you ask economists, they will tell you that if a few people paying really high prices will lead to the company providing more service to more people. Isn't that a good thing, right? If you think about Wikipedia, for instance, some people donate money to Wikipedia. You might have seen the little ads, donate $10 to us. But that leads to a lot more people can access Wikipedia freely. Right? If they actually charge $2 for everyone, a lot of people wouldn't be able to access Wikipedia. So, the idea of personalized pricing is not entirely bad, but we have to think about ways that they could affect the society negatively.
Thank you, Xuan, for that insightful comment about personal pricing. Yes, personally, I'm a little bit scared to hear about all the companies having my personal information on the website and deciding for me how much to pay for an air ticket and everything. But as you mentioned, I think these AI technologies, they bring in new questions that we need to think about. I just mentioned about the authenticity of taste. What does taste mean? What does authenticity mean? You raised the question about what does fairness mean? We embrace it in a different way depending on the context that it is used. So I think these are really good questions. I think that AI technology brings to society. And I think you both have a role to play in these discussions, and as experts in history and anthropology, I wonder, why would you say, it might be obvious now that you've kind of opened, and now you've shown all these examples, but why would you say that it's important for historians or humanities and social science experts to be involved in this AI research discussion? I or Xuan, whichever, whoever wants to go first.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. So, so I think let me speak from the perspective of a social scientist, and I think what we are trying to do are quite simple. So I think a lot of the problem in the application of technology arise from the fact that we have a lot of good solutions, all the advanced technologies that our scientists and engineers are developing. But we actually sometimes don't have a very good understanding what the problem is. What are the problems we are facing, we are trying to solve, right? There is a famous saying, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Now we have AI, suddenly people want to apply AI in everything just because we have it. It's so good, but we maybe lack the understanding of what are actually the social problem we're trying to solve. What are the best way to solve them, right? So as social scientists, our roles are very simple. We try to understand what are the problems we are trying to solve, right? And then we help the scientists, engineers to apply the technology in society. And in the process, we study how are these applications working? Are they actually working? Are there unintended consequences of these, these technologies? So, yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Sean. Do you have any?
Sure. So let me start by saying that I think there is some misconception or kind of misunderstanding about humanities and social sciences scholars. Maybe that these scholars, or including myself, humanities scholars always criticize anything and everything. And I think we need to fix that. And we, humanities and social sciences scholars, are not gatekeeper of new research. But I think we should be a collaborator with scientists and engineers. And so let me quote this. So Steve Jobs once said, "It is technology married with liberal art, married with humanities, that yields us the results that make us heart sing." And I think this statement kind of clearly encapsulates the importance and also kind of excitement that collaborations among different disciplines can bring. So I think this collaboration is key to research in AI, and that's partly because of the nature of AI research. So AI research is about research on intelligence and artificiality, right? So naturally, we should be thinking about what intelligence is and what artificiality is. And this is a question, well, kind of technological question, how to implement intelligence onto the machines or technology. But this is also kind of an ontological question for kind of philosophical questions as well. So there, I think humanities and social scientists, scholars can bring some perspectives. And speaking from my own field, history, so history, some people think history is just about studying people in the past or studying about events, what happened and when. But history is not that kind. Well, we do study people in the past, but it is a study that I think provides a way of framing a worldview. So it is how, by looking at the past, by looking at change over time, we are kind of thinking of framing society in a certain way. And I think the role of historians in AI research and AI discourse is to provide multiple perspectives, multiple ways of framing, for example, different implications of AI or how to develop AI research. And I think this beyond AI is a wonderful first step to integrate scholars from diverse disciplines. And I really hope that we all in different disciplines can collaborate together. And I think beyond AI here could mean not only beyond the current AI technologies, but beyond the dualism that we have between different disciplines.
So. Right. So breaking down the barriers, I guess, between the natural sciences and the so-called humanities and social sciences. Right. So I was wondering. So we were talking about collaborations, the need for collaborations, and between the humanities, social sciences, and the engineers or the natural sciences scientists doing AI research. Is there any way that improvements could be made for future collaborations? Any ideas? It can be naive. It doesn't have to be perfect. Do you have any ideas, Ai or Xuan?
Yeah, I can
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
provide two ideas. So first, and I, we are also educators, so we're in higher educational systems. So I'm always thinking, right, how do we incorporate these perspectives in education? So one problem I think right now is that, especially in the education of engineers, there is not enough humanities and social science courses incorporated into the curriculum. Even at Harvard, I know that the engineers have a very, sort of simple course like technology and ethics, and then that's it. But they are not, encouraged to think about, social science questions and etc. And that is very important because if you think about it, engineers are playing a very important role in society now. They're not just working in company developing these technology. That's very important. But for instance, I also taught in California in a business school. A lot of engineers are starting companies, and they have a huge advantage when they start new tech companies, and they are actually shaping our society in an important way. So it's very important that they get these perspectives before they go out to the society and then change things. And second, I think in the industry, there might be individuals in the audience today that are from the industry companies. So I think there is also room for collaboration there. In US, there is an emerging field called user experience research, user experience design. And in that field, the companies, especially from Silicon Valley, they will hire social scientists from sociology, anthropology, psychology, and also historians to co-develop the technology. And one example I always like to tell is the Nissan, Japanese automotive company. In their research center in California, they actually hired anthropologists to be their chief designer, visionary designer. So yeah, it's very for their, especially for the development of autonomous driving cars. So I myself have done a little bit of work in there, and I think it is so important because when we design autonomous driving cars, technology is one thing. Another thing is we have to think how humans will interact with these autonomous driving cars, because in the next few decades, for a very long time, it will be a coexistence of human drivers and autonomous drivers, right? We have to co-evolve with the technology. So the involvement of social scientists and humanities scholars is so important in industry.
Thank you, Xuan, for that insight. So education and hiring humanities scholars into the workforce for the AI technology. So we're kind of approaching our end of the time, but there's a question that has come through, and I'm going to just read it out. It's for you, Xuan. So I wonder if Dr. Frost or the panelists can share their insight into the different connotations between the East Asian concept of Black technology and the English word dark technology, which is another common word to discuss the bad sides of technological use. Maybe a short, quick answer on that on your part, Xuan?
Yeah, so I think, in US, in the English context, the dark technology is often associated with the dark web, a lot of technological application that kind of illicit underground. And also relevant to our topic today, a lot of these conceptions are influenced by our culture, our cultural products. For instance, the Hollywood movies, right? There are so many movies that portray AI in these Terminator kind of perspective. It's going to be the doom of humanity, things like that, which are quite inaccurate and they cause a lot of fear and sort of caution among the viewers. So a lot of this kind of association between the technology being dark and then is also, I think, have to be situated in the cultural context in the West. And then East Asia, maybe I can comment. So the idea of Black technology is actually as a very interesting sort of holds the promise of the future. Also came from Japanese anime and novels. So I'm also interested to learn why is that the case? Why in the East Asian context that the idea has slightly changed and become a very interesting and powerful concept today.
Thank you, Xuan. So, final remarks as we wrap up this session from you.
Yeah, sure. So, thank you so much, and thank you, Xuan, for joining us in the early morning in Denmark. So, well, as we saw today, culture creates AI, and AI creates culture, as we saw today. So, I think how we create society and how we create AI depend on us. So, I hope we can make the future together and beyond. Oh, yes.
So on that note, I would like to end this session. Thank you for joining us, Xuan, from all the way from Denmark. And yeah, thank you. And thank you, Ai, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for participating in our fourth Science Cafe. So now I'm going to switch into Japanese. 本日は第4回のサイエンスカフェにご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。これで終了とさせていただきます。次回は第5回3月18日金曜日の6時から東京大学医学系研究科の大木健一教授、日本科学未来館の松谷亮介さんによる対談を行う予定です。Beyond AI 研究推進機構のホームページにて告知してまいりますので、次回もぜひご参加いただければと思います。本日はどうもありがとうございました。